Hello. Good morning, good evening, good night, good afternoon. Maybe it's, who knows what time it is where you are. I have a little story to tell. Rudy, of Rudy's Retro Info, got a super pet some months ago. I had a hand in this, and there is, of course, a story. There's always a story that goes along with it. There was, I guess, essentially kind of a pawn shop or a cash converter, or I don't remember the name of the place out in Oshawa. And suddenly one day they had listed some stuff. And I called them up. I said, Rudy. So anyway, the most expensive item was the SuperPET. But did it work? Did any of it work? Excellent question. Anyway, so the very next morning, I called them and I said, yo. So I put, actually, there were a couple of things I like immediately sent them a deposit to put some things on hold, but wasn't sure if I was really interested in a a great big pet thing. Not, I have some. I have some. Anyway, so in the end, I got there, and sure enough, there was another fellow, and I struggled to remember his name, but I've seen him at the World of Commodore, and there he is waiting, and he's like, anyway. So there was somebody he knew who was interested in the Super Pet. So basically, we talked, um, and I told him, what Rudy had in mind, and he talked to his guy, and I talked to Rudy, and it was decided that, yeah, okay, you know what, give Rudy a shot, because Rudy makes cool videos on things, and this could be good. Anyway, but it would have been, it was one of those things where if the other guy had really, 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 really wanted it, then I'm sure Rudy would have said, "That's okay, that's good, that's fine." And maybe looking back on it, that's what he should have done. Because it's funny, I brought it home and turned it on, it didn't work, and it's funny. Rudy was so happy that it didn't work because then, of course, he would have to fix it, and he could learn from it and all that. Well, I think that was April of 2024. I think it was somewhere in August that he finally got it working. I don't know the exact timelines, but and he worked on it a lot. And one of the things he found was the circuit board that was in there was not the original. Not surprising after, 45 years or how many years, but that there is a great big, as Rudy would call a bodge wire, that has to be on the underside of the Super Pet board, or an 8032 board, sorry, the main board for a Super Pet to work. He didn't know that. I didn't know that. And I started sending him like spare things so that he would have things to test with. Because, I know people fix things without anything, and they take out their scopes and they take out their this and they take up their that. And I'm like, I have no clue. Because mostly I fix things, I have spares. So I can double check things, verify things, take readings here and there, and say, and hopefully we get the aha moment. Anyway, hang on. Rudy has a great intro to his stuff. Let's play the intro.
So before we start doing the actual repair on the Super Pet side of,
Okay, so that's Rudy's intro. And it's funny, I used to have like an intro thing that I did, but I kind of stopped because mostly I don't do a whole lot of editing. And then when you edit something, then you have to basically have it, I'm not sure what the word is, render. And this can take a whole bunch of, so it was like, I'm spending so much time rendering and not recording. But Rudy has a cool setup. He's up here in the corner. He's got another thing here that could be something, and then we see his hand. So he's got all kinds of different angles going on, and I don't. Anyway, the long and the short of it is, Rudy went looking all around the internet to find any documentation he could. Now, I did find a thing in the basement. I said, "Oh my word, it's schematics, the magical schematics," but nothing else in terms of like words saying, "Well, if this is happening, try this. If this is happening, try that. Look for this." Like nothing like that Visible 64 site on the internet where you can look and it'll show you various possibilities of what the screen would look like and what it might be. None of that. He could find nothing. So, what did he do, of course? He started working on a manual based on his findings to help him remember what he found, but also help others who have super pets that have issues. And he didn't actually, he's made two of them because I sent him some other super pet boards and 8032 boards. And there was one I sent that is, okay, going back to super pets. There are super pets, they all have the 8032 board, and the later versions had a one board thing. The early super pets consisted of two boards, and it to me it looked like Commodore and the University of Waterloo did all their stuff, and then to get it out the door, it looks like they had the middle board was what they did, and then they added, from the looks of it anyway, somebody else's memory board. And then there were legs and things and cables and all kinds of stuff to make it all hook together. And that's what they did. So, but then they came up with a single board version. So basically, if you open up a Super Pet, it may have three boards, it may have two. And actually, if I don't remember exactly what it looks like, but if there's another funny little thing in there, which would be much smaller, the TPUG group, the Toronto Pet Users Group, and I remember being around it at the time, did a thing. Besides the languages from Waterloo and other such things, they did some other thing that you could use OS 9 on a Super Pet. Now, did many people actually do this? I don't know. But I do remember the excitement around TPUG when all of this was happening. Anyway, back to Rudy. So he was so pleased it didn't work. Well, that didn't last too long. But there was a lot of things that he tried initially that had no chance of working because he didn't have that wire on the bottom of the 8032. But now, if you search, the name of his video is "I'm repairing Commodore SuperPet with new manual." Well, he's actually made two manuals. One is for the single board, one is for the double board. And basically he was able to make sure that the single boards were working, and he made note of all the things and RAM things and what chips do what and such. And with the dual one, he ran through that for me, got it all working, and then he was able to do all kinds of things. As I said to him, you got to get it working so you can break it. Isn't that special? And breaking it doesn't mean break it. Break it means taking out chips, seeing what things do, seeing what things don't do, seeing what the symptoms are, etc., etc., etc. So he has made two manuals, which, from what I understand, are freely available on his. And I've never been there, and I don't understand exactly, but he has a GitHub page. So if you have a Super Pet, I would encourage you to watch his video. It is not his short. It's 32 minutes and 14 seconds. But I would like to think that there are many people who have Super Pets sitting there that are in various stages of disrepair, and they've looked around and they found nothing that they can do anything with, or no references. But now there is help. There is hope. And this manual, I know, will be a work in progress, because there will be other people who I'm sure write to him about things and say, "Oh, I found this." And kind of like, it's funny, airline pilots are famous for checklists, and more things and stuff are getting famous for, I don't know, airline pilots are the biggest thing, where if some failure arrives, they have huge manuals, and they quickly flip to say, "Okay, this is happening, and here's a checklist of things to check and things to do and things to although more and more, from what I understand, um, operating rooms have checklists. And I was watching some episode long ago of, I think it was ER, near the end of the run, when one of the doctors on ER had to get a liver transplant. I think it was a liver transplant. And beforehand, one of his former colleagues, who hadn't been on the show for a long time, showed up to observe. He worked at the hospital where he was having this done, and he said, there's this new thing about checklists. Da, da, da. Anyway, so the surgeon was like, yeah, what do you know? But anyway, they went through the checklist. There was something or another that was on the checklist that wasn't immediately there and wasn't immediately handy. But the nurse said, yeah, okay, we'll get that. And of course, right in the middle of the operation, something happened. They were like, oh yeah, we need that. And had they not had that, he might have died. So checklists are important. So airplanes, when they're first testing them out, and they're always like, especially the test pilots, there's always things that aren't ready and systems that aren't working and other things. But they go up and do test flights, and it wasn't just, oh yeah, we'll see if it flies and see how fast it goes and all that other stuff. It was like, okay, so we gotta figure out if something goes wrong, what do we do? Now, of course, some cases the plane crashes, they eject, and they say, oh, that wasn't good. But mostly, they get back on the ground, and they say, okay, what did we have? What went on? And they immediately write out a new checklist. That's how they get checklists. Sort of like Rudy's manual, in that it's, yes, he's finished, but it'll never be finished because there's always going to be some other thing that comes up. So, anyway, Rudy's Retro Intel is the YouTube channel, and this was put out fairly recently, and it's probably one of the best resources there is for anybody who has a super pet, might get a super pet, wants a super pet, or anything of that nature. And it's funny, I joke with him that he is going to soon be the Superman, the Super Pet Man. I believe there's already somebody sending him a couple of boards, or have talked about sending him a couple of boards, because they've been trying and they're just like at the point where you're like, oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. So we'll see. Anyway, so I'm repairing Commodore Super Pet with a new manual is the name of the video. Rudy's Retro Intro. That's RUDY''SRETROINTEL. And he's got a cool logo and he's got a cool opening. And he has many views, almost like a game player. So I would encourage you, if you have a moment, to check it out and see what you can see and see what you can learn. And Rudy, of course, always appreciates comments. He's an approachable, friendly sort. And, if you have questions, I'm sure he'll do his best to answer. And if he doesn't have answers, then, um, like all of us, we'll ponder, fret, and see what we can come up with in terms of an answer. But it's funny, in many, many walks of life, you have people who come up with answers that they know aren't right. They just hope you go away. That is not Rudy. If he doesn't know, he'll say, I don't know, but I'll look into it. And, or if it's really out of his wheelhouse, like I know one thing that he absolutely hates working on are Osborne luggable computers. And from what I know, he will not. They apparently are a tremendous pain. The way they're put together, all that you have to do, like if you do one little thing, you can't, there's no way to really, you got to put this whole long thing back together and then see, and then, anyway. So, as I say, if you have a question and he has an answer, he will give you the best answer he has. If he has no answer and he intends to try and figure it out, he'll tell you. And if you say, yo, I've got an Osborne luggable that I want fixed, he'll say, go somewhere else. Not my thing. Anyway, so have a lovely, lovely day, and we'll see you again soon. Until then, bye for now.